It is 6 o'clock. I will call to order this special meeting of the Waco ISD Board of Trustees. We do have a quorum present, and we will move on to item 3A, which is a discussion of community meeting on possible school closures. Let me begin by welcoming all of you to the third of our three community meetings on House Bill 1842 and Senate Bill 1882. Because we have a quorum of board members here, this has been posted as a special board meeting, but the real purpose tonight is to hear from you. As some of you know, legislation passed in Austin over the last 2 years could result in campuses that don't meet standard for 5 consecutive years either being closed or having the Board of Trustees removed for the entire district. Depending upon the results that we get this spring, as many as 5 Waco ISD campuses could be impacted by this legislation. This evening, Dr. Nelson is going to give you a brief overview of the legislation, how it impacts Waco ISD, and then we'll also discuss some of the options that he's considering presenting to the board. It has been humbling to see the number of people who've shown up to each of these meetings, to really hear and to get the sense of folks who really want to help us get these schools to the point where they meet standard. And so on behalf of everyone on the board, thank you for your support of the Waco Public Schools, and we appreciate and look forward to getting your input this evening. Because this is posted as a board meeting, let me introduce the other board members who are here tonight. On the front row, we have Secretary Norman Manning. Next to him is Carrie Dupuy. Next to Carrie is Larry Pettis. A couple of rows back is Angela Tikel. I know Stephanie Quarterweg is coming a little bit late, and Alan Sykes may be here this evening. Oh, and there's Alan on the back row. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent. So please join me in welcoming the superintendent of the Waco Public Schools, Dr. Marcus Nelson.
Thank you. Good evening. We're so very excited to be here at the third community meeting. It is good and pleasant when we can come together and dwell in unity. And we're here to talk to you tonight about some very serious topics facing our school system. But before I get started, I wanted to be sure and recognize our host and hostess for this wonderful event. The Greater Waco Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has welcomed me with open arms. I've had several meetings here already with members of LULAC and just selected members of the Hispanic community. And I wanted to especially recognize Councilwoman Alice Rodriguez and her husband, Joe, for their leadership and support. Let's recognize, give them a round of applause in the back. You know, you'll hear us talking about a lot of ideas over the next few minutes together, but we want to be emphatically clear that there is a change coming to Waco ISD, and it is intended to improve the organization. No matter what school we have in our system, all of our schools can do better. And with this rising levels of accountability coming from the Texas Education Agency, urban school districts are going to have to be more fierce in our expectations and how we go about doing our business. And we're not going to be able to do it alone. That's why I look forward to partners like the Hispanic Chamber and others. The Greater Waco Chamber has been an outstanding partner as well as the African American Chamber, NAACP, all three of our large foundations under the direction of Mrs. Felicia Goodman, Mr. Tom Staton, and Miss Ashley Allison. Yes, Miss Ashley Allison have been really already stepping up to the plate to have conversations about how we're going to support our instructional efforts. We do have a quick PowerPoint before we get into feedback from you. I did want to recognize a couple other very special people that are here. First, help me welcome our state representative, Representative Doc Anderson, who's here. The president of the Midway Independent School District Board of Trustees and General Counsel for the Waco ISD, Mr. Peter Russick, is here. Just by show of hands, with all of our principals, please show your hands. I know we got just about all of them here tonight, at least those from the South. So thank you for being here. And Mr. Love back there, I see. Big game Friday night. Dr. Edison wanted me to say upset alert. University gonna try to put it on Waco, but we'll save that for another meeting. So we have a presentation here that we just ask that you follow along with us. We really want to thank you for joining us here tonight because with all due respect, one of the things we've learned in some of our community meetings is that there's a perception that we may not be as transparent as we need to be. The paper defined it as some trust issues. And I want to be clear that we're an open book. Did you know that you can go to our website right now and view every check that the school district has cut? We keep it on a register, and as tax-paying citizens, we believe we're obligated to show the public whether the check is for $9 for reimbursing someone to $900,000 on some of our most expensive programs. All of it is accessible online. Before we get started, I wanted to also go over a recent survey that we did at the beginning of the year, September 6th through the 20th. Over 3,500 people in our community completed this survey. For me as a new superintendent, I was hoping to gather some facts, see if the perception matches the reality. And I'm happy to report that the survey was genuinely positive. Most of the people that participated in this survey had positive things to say about the Waco Independent School District. Overall, 69% said that the quality of the district was either excellent or good. 55% of the respondents agree or strongly agree that Waco ISD prepares our students for success beyond high school. Now, I won't go over all the results with you in detail, but the point we're trying to emphasize in the beginning of our community meeting is that over 3,500 people, 70% of them say things are going well in the school system. That's significant. As with any survey, we were also looking for opportunities to improve. And we got that feedback. What we found is that, in general, students and parents have a more positive perception of Waco ISD than the community members do. We've also seen that in some of our community meetings as well. Nearly 1/3 of adults and almost half of students are undecided about whether Waco ISD is a good financial steward. My opinion is that's because a lot of the students didn't understand what financial stewardship means. But either way, one of the reasons why we tell you about our check register is so you can take some nuggets away from this meeting and know that transparency is our battle cry. We want to be accountable. One of the reasons why the board and myself are here today is because we want you to know that the things we're talking to you about, we take personal. I mean, it's embarrassing to stand up and talk about a standard for academic excellence. They don't have IR problems in Midway. They don't have IR problems in La Vega. And the expectations that other districts have for their children cannot be higher than the expectations we have for our kids. I won't waste your time going over the whole profile. If you don't know the tale of the tape, we're just a little under 15,000 students, 2,800 employees, 61 square miles. The reason why I think this is funny is because I'm coming from a place, those of you that don't know, I'm coming from a place called Laredo, Texas. Laredo, Texas is on the north bank of the Rio Grande River. We had 26,000 students on 32 campuses in 12 square miles. Yeah, no loop or anything like that. So it's a wonderful time to be in Waco ISD because, in my opinion, there's lots of good things happening. And we're on an upward trajectory to make sure that our kids seek and ultimately attain excellence. Some of the highlights that we're proud of: Waco, two of our most exciting school-to-career programs. Our partnerships with different local businesses really is intended to create pipelines for kids who are not going to pursue a four-year degree. Through Guama and Guaca, they can pursue a technical certification, come out of high school ready to go to work. And we currently accept students from all over Region 12, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Dr. McCall and his team really have organized a non-traditional campus that has a group of teachers that's committed to working with a student that not every student is like that. Some students are trying to decide whether or not they go to Baylor or Rice. Some are trying to decide whether they go to Abilene Christian or Oklahoma Christian. But then we got a group of students that say in ninth grade, college is not for me. And for them, we're still obligated to help these students. Tennyson Middle School, one of the highest performing middle schools in the state of Texas. The state of Texas gives out distinctions each year. The most distinctions you can get is 7. Tennyson received all 7. So that says something about the academic leadership, the instructional prowess happening over at that school under the direction of Mrs. Lisa Hall. Our finances are second to none. We have one of the top chief financial officers in this state. She has developed a reputation for being almost perfect. She doesn't like that. I know she wants me to say perfect, but our administrative cost ratio, that's one of the boxes you have to check. And to be quite candid, it's hard for us to get that box because we're so top heavy, which we're going to address in this meeting. We've recently started to reduce some of our central office positions. And see, it's kind of a tough situation. I'm not whining. I'm honored to serve as the superintendent of schools in the Waco ISD. However, know that not only do we have to deal with the challenges we're about to talk to you about, one of the challenges we're not even mentioning is a $3 million budget deficit that we've got to make up for that has built up over the last decade. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to reduce it by $3 million in 2 semesters, but we already started with $500,000 in cuts at the central office. And we're trying to send to the message to our community that if it's not focused on our kids, if we have a position that cannot explain to me how it impacts students, then we have to ask the question, could we use that position differently? And that's what we've been trying to do. On to the reason that we've gotten here, the reason we're here tonight. I want to say that what I'm about to talk to you about, in my humble opinion, is serious business. It's the most serious thing going on in McLennan County right now. How our schools perform. And it's kind of interesting in this community because there's this diversity that's almost divided. almost divided, where I hear a lot of Hispanic people saying, well, I want to know what we're doing about the Hispanic students. I hear a lot of African American people saying, I want to know what we're doing about the African American students. But for my office, all means all. And that's every kid we have. I want to see them improve. And our instructional program has to become more rigorous. It doesn't matter what race you are. And yes, 85% of our kids are economically disadvantaged, but 15% of them are not. And really, we're here tonight to talk about some of our neediest schools, but our message is really for every kid we have. We're going to push this bar and really force more kids to respond to our pyramid of interventions. House Bill 1842, we want to be clear, is not WISD policy. The board didn't have a meeting in the spring or in 2015. With all due respect to our honorable state rep, this happened at his level. And as the legislature meets every 2 years, there's a host of statutes that are voted on. And once they become House bills or Senate bills, we as taxpaying citizens are forced to honor them. I'm not here to discuss how you feel about that House bill. That happened in 2015. If you're that unhappy about it, I'm sure Representative Anderson will meet you afterwards and you can have a conversation with him. We didn't do it. And we want to make that clear. And I joke a lot with my good friend Representative Anderson. We're not finger pointing in our school district. But this House bill basically says that at the end of this school year, in May of 2018, any school that has been improvement required for 5 years or more automatically closes or gets a new board of managers. Now, if you don't understand, we have 5 schools on that list. We only have 23 schools. So I'm wondering if you understand, Waco, Texas, what this means. If for some reason we were to close 5, it was just 2011 and you closed how many? 8. 5 years later, you closed 5 more. It's the beginning of the end of our beloved school system if we don't do something about it. So you ask yourself, how important is it in Waco, Texas, to have a Waco high school, to have a university high school? And we're at a point where we have to fix our schools. These are problems that we created. I firmly believe that the parents in our school system are sending us the best kids they have. They're not keeping the good ones at home. And our job is to take the students that we have and educate them in a way that changes their lives. No excuses. House Bill 1842 offers this option to have a new board of managers. I personally am not even up for having a conversation about that. It's a waste of time. Our board was just selected as one of the top boards in this region less than a year ago, or a little over a year ago. TEA will tell you that the Board of Trustees in Waco ISD has done everything that has been asked of them since 2015. They can't say that for the superintendent. They can't say that for the assistant superintendents. And they sure can't say that for the principals that are getting paid to fix this problem. But the board has done everything they're supposed to do. Now, does the board need to build more relationships in the community? They would tell you that's already their goal. That's why we're already doing work to engage our families. But we're really not having conversations about having a new board. With all due respect, I've heard a lot of criticism of our board. And I think that's kind of ironic because the board hired me. So you're not going to find me bad-mouthing the board. It's just not going to happen. Plus, I just don't think this, with all due respect, this is not a politically laden problem. I mean, we do need to make our voice heard in Austin. We do need to speak up for public schools in the state of Texas. But fixing this problem is the adults that are employed in the Waco Independent School District. The ones that get paid a check to do a job. And it's not just me. It's every teacher we got, every counselor, every specialist, every coach. We've all got to come together and ask ourselves the question, how do we feel about the fact that we have 5 schools that for 5 years in a row were low performing, and it's only now in November that we're filling up halls having a conversation about it? How do you feel about that? They're not having these meetings in Midway. They're not having these meetings at Conley, in La Vega. Are their teachers better? Are their administration better? Are their kids better? No, we got some of the best and the brightest children that any community would want to have. A group of resilient kids. A group where diversity is our strength. So House Bill 1842 lays out these serious parameters. I got my first letter on this the first day of school this year, August 17th. I got a letter from actually it was from the commissioner. And it said, hey, welcome to Waco. We're excited about your presence. By the way, in May, we're closing 5 schools if you don't get them to perform. And I say that because really, I guess that's a little misleading because I knew what I signed up for. And I want this for Waco. And I want Waco to want this as bad as I want this for us. I want us to boldly proclaim in the same newspaper that puts on the front page, closure looms. Sky is falling. I want that same newspaper to put, oh my, they made it. And our principals and teachers will tell you right now that our kids understand this. And our kids want their schools to stay open. And we need to help them. We need to help them accomplish that task. In the defense of the state of Texas, during the legislative session in 2017, the Senate gave us a little reprieve. Senate Bill 1882 says that the Board of Trustees of a school district may contract with the governing body of an open enrollment charter school for the district to partner with the charter school to operate a district campus. So, I don't want to get into all the specifics, but basically we have one of 3 options. First of all of our schools can make it this May. Everybody can be part of the movie where we have some more community meetings and we celebrate that they made it, and that'll be wonderful. Another option is for us to surrender these 5 schools right now to charter networks. And our board would basically say thank you, but no thank you. We're no longer interested in Carver, Indian Springs, Alta Vista, J.H. Hines, Brook Avenue. Who am I forgetting? And Crestview's close by. It's not going to happen, folks. We're not giving up our schools. They'll have to take these schools out of our dead, cold hands. I mean, so having said that, what are we going to do? And basically, the Senate Bill 1882 allows for us to seek some, what I'll define as innovative partnerships. We have to identify a nonprofit and organization in our community, and we still do have to give up some authority because we have to now share the responsibility of leading our 5 low-performing schools with the local nonprofit. The good news is, I believe we have several nonprofits in the city of Waco that can help us accomplish our goals. And I'm not sure exactly what the application will look like when we send it in, but basically we have to prepare something formal to present to our board for action in January. So that's what we're doing we started it in July, and we're preparing for a special called meeting in January where we ask the board to approve our application to the Texas Education Agency for this mandate. I really don't know how we'll do planning all this with a nonprofit and then dealing with it once our schools make it. I'm not sure. I haven't got that far yet. But I know right now we spend every day working in our campuses as if the schools are going to make it. It's just the administration, the senior level, that's working on some of these contingency plans in the event we don't. If you're not sure, all the campuses that are impacted are up here for you to see. We have these 5, 2 middle schools. So I'm looking at the community of Waco like, do you understand how unacceptable it would be in Waco ISD if we just close 2 middle schools next fall? Where are they going to go? Now, what the state of Texas wants me to do is put them on buses and send them to Tennyson, put portables up at Tennyson. I'm willing to bet that if I look at the history of Waco ISD, there was a time where we did that in the 50s or the 60s. I'm not busing kids from South Waco or East Waco to another school. So it's harder for their parents to be engaged. It's harder for the kids to get to schools. There'll be parents, if we bus kids from Carver to Tennyson, there'll be parents at Carver that never go to Tennyson. They won't even know where it is. They don't have transportation. So we're not going backwards. We're going forward. Many of you participated a year ago in what was called Transformation Committee meetings. Show of hands, anyone remember being a part of that? Well, our plan, as you know, is to follow up with those committees. Because we really do think each neighborhood, so to speak, has a different set of issues that they have to address to accomplish our goals. And we do feel like those transformation committees were giving us enough feedback where we want to continue that group. So we will be following up. I guess you can tell I'm kind of fired up about this topic. It's my life's work to make sure that we have a quality school in every neighborhood. We've already spent time right now trying to make sure that we put a quality principal in every school, not just a good principal, but a great principal in every school, a quality teacher in every classroom. We're having to change our conversations. I love our teachers. I'm not indicting them in any way. I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that if we have a student achievement problem, then it's just common sense for a superintendent to start with his employees. That makes sense. I don't believe this is because the kids don't want to perform. I believe the kids are coming to school with everything they got, good and bad and ugly, and they're doing the best they can. It's our job to take their instruction to a more rigorous level so that every kid has choices and options. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I can't wait for the day for our team to proclaim that they did it. And the board and I will celebrate, knowing we put the team together that made this go. And it's a lot of uncomfortable conversations. Principals can tell you right now, when they meet with me, we don't sing kumbaya. We pull out their assessment data. And if their assessment data has drops, it don't matter to me if it's Hillcrest, PDS. If you got drops, I have an issue with it. No more drops. No more rising tide of mediocrity. That's what got us to this. A couple kids drop out, 87. A dozen kids in 97. You get to 2007, you got 30 kids. And here we are in 2017, about to lose our whole school district. It won't happen. So that's our problem. We've looked at all kinds of options. The one that's marinating, as I like to say, so to speak, is, first of all, at middle school. What we want to do, this is still all, someone be quoting me, Shelley, I know you like to quote. One of the things we're looking at is a 6th grade center. Taking all the 6th graders from Indian Springs and from Carver and putting them on one campus, which would then leave us with 7th and 8th grade, a junior high, what it used to be called around here. In addition to a 6th grade center, we looked at for 7th and 8th grade, going what we call single gender campuses. You know, we got to tell you, we're getting mixed reviews out in the public about that. So we'll have to be clear with the board that not everybody's for that idea. We're just trying to be very targeted in our innovation so we can say, no, when we did this, that worked. If it doesn't work, then obviously we'll have to try something different. At the elementary schools, what we're looking at is an early childhood focus. See, for us, everything we want to fix for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade really begins at pre-K3. And we have this huge literacy gap. I don't know if you've heard our district talking about literacy, but trust me, you're about to hear it on steroids, so to speak. We really want, literacy is one of our fundamental challenges in this district. You improve the number of kids entering kindergarten, reading on grade level, and you transform this entire school system. One of the problems we have now is that you go to 5th grade, and sitting in that 5th grade class is a kid reading on a 9th grade level and another kid reading on a 2nd grade level. And the teacher is expected to differentiate, to push the 9th grade kid to start reading the classics and to stop and teach phonemic awareness to this 5th grader who's at a 2nd or 3rd grade level. It's one of the reasons why we can't really indict our teachers. We're asking them to do the impossible. We're asking them to take these kids, and no matter where they're from, every kid needs to be perfect. So for me, it's kind of like I have people ask me, say, well, what are you going to do about university football? Get them to read on grade level? I could care less about what's happening on the football field as long as they all going to college. And that's really my focus. I mean, we're not down here building athletic championships. We're down here building graduates. And these are the kinds of things we got to come back to focus on. Don't get me wrong. I like football as much as the next guy. I love to watch the band. But when you see some of our gaps in reading, you'll understand why it's one of the most fundamental problems we need to work on. Our concept is that if you took J.H. Hines and you turned it into a primary school that housed all the pre-K3, pre-K4, kindergarten first, and second grade students from Brook Avenue and J.H. Hines go to J.H. Hines. And then create a third, fourth, and fifth grade campus at Brook Avenue that would cover J.H. Hines and Brook Avenue. We think it'll allow us to really partner with what we call our wraparound services. United Way has a 0 to 3 early childhood emphasis that they're going to be rolling out over the next 6 months. We want to be part of that. So does the YMCA, so does LULAC, so does NAACP. And so that will really help us focus those wraparound services to the primary campuses, which is where those programs are intended. When we get to third, fourth, and fifth, we become a little more content focused in our instruction. One of the reasons why we want to have single gender middle schools is because of some of the hormonal challenges our children face. And we're hoping that by separating them, we can have women in our community come in and put some of our young female students in a room and break it down on them in a way that only a female can talk to a female. And likewise, we want to go over to the male campus and put some of them knuckleheads in a room and talk to them in a way that only a man can talk to a young man. And start to build some confidence and, you know, some of this racial divide stuff. Well, I would say to some of our Latino brothers and sisters, where you at? Because we'll need you. We're going to need a diverse group to walk into these schools, help us mentor, tutor, and change these kids' lives. So those are some of our ideas. I'll close before we open it up for questions with this is the last of our 3 meetings. And it is, as Ms. Conlon says, it is looming over us, a deadline. And our team is working hours upon hours each day and night, trying to figure out, there's a rubric from TEA, there's an application. Before we get to all that, we still have to have our board review and approve our ideas. And where we're at now is documenting that we've been to the public and asked for your ideas. The 6th grade center idea came from a community meeting. So somebody mentioned it, now it's in the presentation. Now, I'm not saying all your ideas are going to get up there that easy, but the challenge is to give us your feedback. We hope that under my tenure, we have unprecedented transparency and communication. I know it's hard to get a meeting with me. I'm looking at some of the parents that have been patient with getting a meeting with me. But if you want a meeting with me, you can have it. We've been making our rounds to our local churches, trying to send the message that we believe in the role that our shepherds play in our community, and we know they have more influence over their flock, so to speak, than just about anyone. So do your thing, Reverend Dalco. Help us. Help us. So we'll be having just about every board meeting that we have between now and a special called meeting in January. We'll have this as an agenda item. Some of it will be closed session due to the personnel nature of it. Some of it will be an open session in the form of an update. So what we'd like to do now is, I hope you feel our commitment to student success. I hope you feel a new level of energy and commitment to the long-term relationship it's going to take to revive our school district. And I hope that you're willing to be a part of this partnership. We hope to engage parents and community members as partners. We want you to feel ownership. If our schools aren't successful, I'll admit, I feel the most responsibility. It's written in my contract. But everyone should be responsible What would South Waco do if we just closed Alta Vista? It'd be a step back. It'd be a step. You'd have that big old building sitting there. Who knows what would happen with it? So the other option is to fix Alta Vista. And that's where we're at. So what we like to do at this time is open it up for comments or questions. We have several members of my team that are here taking notes. The trustees are here that you met earlier, Representative Anderson as well. And we just want to hear from you on comments or questions that we can answer. Mr. DeBeer has a microphone, and so does Ms. Robertson right there. Reverend Dalco.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for holding these meetings and the board. We definitely, as a community, appreciate the fact that you are allowing the community to come out and express themselves. I have several questions, and as someone who is, I'm a pastor, of course, across the street, but also heavily involved in the schools as well. You mentioned the transformation meetings. I was heavily involved in that. I did attend the last meeting. And I challenge everyone here to not just show up to these meetings, but to be active and engaged in these schools. They really need you there. And I say that as someone who's also there. Just because I'm a pastor, I don't just send my congregation. I'm at South Waco Elementary every week. So everybody needs to be there. This is Waco's problem. It's not just the school board, and it's not just the superintendent's problem. So that's part of what I want to say. But as a representative of this community who's also engaged, I have several questions. They're not necessarily my questions. These are coming from people who are here in South Waco. And so if you don't mind, I just want to take the time. One question that I have is, why is South Waco Elementary a part of this process? When we did do the transformation meetings, and South Waco Elementary came off the list. So one of the questions that's being raised at this time by some of the individuals here in South Waco is, why are they included in this particular process that's taking place and part of the plan?
I'll go ahead and answer that real quick. That's a great question. I failed to mention in my presentation that what we're talking about for J.H. Hines and Brook Avenue, we also want to do with South Waco and Alta Vista. So that's what Reverend Dalco is talking about. So South Waco, if you don't know the situation, they kind of come out of nowhere because they're not on the list. They're not anywhere near the 1842 constraints. And really the answer to your question is, it was out of location and proximity. Once we made the decision that we were going to have an early childhood focus, and I talk about these wraparound services with Prosper Waco and United Way and different organizations, it really it forces us to have a central facility where they go focus on early childhood programs. So we talked about Kendrick too. But Kendrick then requires us to bus kids across the highway. And we felt like South Waco and Alta Vista is a natural location idea. It's not in stone. I've spoken to the principal as recently as today, and that could go a whole lot of other ways. For example, we could put 3 through 5 at South Waco. We're just using some numbers that we get from, what is Tiffany's title? Teams, from our numbers cruncher, and that's where we came up with it. But it's an issue on whether we can put more kids at Carver than we can at Indian Springs. You can't put primary kids at Brook Avenue because the little kids can't go upstairs. So Alta Vista needs a primary school. It could either be Kendrick. That's about it. And South Waco, if you drive from South Waco to Alta Vista, it's almost walking distance. I know it'd be a long walk on a hot day, but. So to answer your question, it was nothing personal. We just are trying to get creative for the record, we don't even know if this idea is going to work, because you have to have 50% of your kids at Alta Vista need to be new kids. And I don't know if our numbers really get down like that as far as South Waco kids coming up to Alta Vista, but that's where it came from.
You may have just answered one of the other questions, and that is, if you're taking low-performing kids and placing them all kind of at the same place, how is that going to actually improve, provide improvement? I just heard you say that maybe because some of the kids have to be new kids coming in as well.
Right.
So, which leads to another question in terms of busing. How would that take place in terms of transportation?
Well, you know, we have our assistant superintendent here for operations, Mr. Israel Carrera. Israel, let him stand and see you. Israel has just joined our team from the Del Rio system. And quite candidly, this type of transition is his expertise. He's been in school districts that have had to go through this type of transportation challenge. And our commitment is that really a parent wouldn't see much difference. So what would happen when school starts is all the 3rd through 5th graders, if the board approved this, all the 3rd through 5th graders from South Waco and from Alta Vista would go to Alta Vista. Most of them would walk. Now, if we've got a situation where we need to bus a kid because they're in a hazardous route, well, then we'll bus them. Plain and simple. But for some of those South Waco homes that are too far from Alta Vista, yes, they will be bused to Alta Vista. Now, when they're in pre-K3, pre-K4, pre-K5, pre-K3, 4, and kindergarten, then they would go to South Waco. So transportation is a challenge. Communication with parents on how it's going to change is another challenge. And those are things we're prepared to address in the event the board approves this decision.
What about staffing in terms of, you know, of course you've got staffing, those that are focused on intermediate kids. How's that going to work if you split the schools up in terms of the staffing?
You know, there's no, in our plans as we look at it, there's no plans for layoffs. Now, there is going to be some conversations about performance, because we're going to put the best teachers we got at these low-performing schools. And so, you know, for us, the way we define the best teachers we have is not necessarily the teachers who, you know, make kids feel good. You know, the assessment that we want to do for teacher analysis is really done through their performance data. And so, you know, all the pre-K 3, 4, and kindergarten teachers right now at South Waco and Alta Vista theoretically would go to South Waco. And all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers at South Waco would theoretically go, did I say that right? South Waco would go to Alta Vista. And everybody will have a home. Now, we're not just sending people with low scores up there, so that's a different conversation, but in general, everybody does have a home. We're not trying to lay anyone off.
And I apologize, I don't mean to dominate the meeting, but once again, these are questions that are kind of coming from the community. I do want people to be aware of that. What about those who have special needs, the special education department? How will that affect those kids?
That's a good question. You know, I very respectfully, I'm not trying to engage in conflict with you, but, you know, as mid-level managers, things like special education, gifted and talented, physical education, music, art, PE, all of that is part of our planning. So special ed, it's driven by law. So if a kid has an R that says, I need a teacher aide, it don't matter to me if that kid's at South Waco or at Alta Vista. What matters to me is what was in the art and making sure we honor what was, and that's our commitment regardless of our structure.
Okay. No, great. And once again, I'm just raising questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Concerns from the community.
You're not the first person.
You know, from the community. These are not all my questions, trust me. Is there or will there be another meeting to convey what is decided upon?
You know, that's something I'd have to talk to my board about. There definitely will be conversations that are open meetings at the board level, and we'd encourage the community to come to that. I don't mind doing a set of community meetings and rolling out our plan. Kind of hesitant to do that till everything's been approved, because it does me no good to come and say, here's what I'm taking, and I can't get a motion or a second or 4 votes. So, that's a conversation we'll have as a board. I know we want people to feel like they have input. Principals will know. I would not do anything formal and definitive to South Waco Elementary without giving Mrs. Lee the information and the request to go tell her school community. I can come tell them, but not like she can. Alta Vista, she needs to take care of her problem. And so however we decide to go with it, I'd ask her to go and explain, here's what we're doing. Now, if I need to do it, I don't have a problem standing up and talking.
Thank you,
Good
Dr.
question.
Nelson.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir, senor. Oh, okay, sorry, that's where I just came from.
I'm Dr. Baltasar Arispe y Acevedo. I'm a retired professor of research educational leadership and policy at the University of Texas. I know here in Waco, they don't even know where that is. It's up the street. My question really revolves about the fact that nobody seems to be addressing the fact that where are the best practices that emerged from 4 years of this deliberation? This has been going on for 4 years, and I've been here 4, and it seems like we've had this meeting, every 4 years. That's one question. The other question is, who's going to be the quality control officer for this enterprise? Hopefully somebody who's external and doesn't have a stake in the daily operation, but sees it from a different angle. The other question is, what kind of evaluation model is going to be used? I brought that up to the previous superintendent, and I found out that there wasn't a research and evaluation department in this district. Is there one now?
Not formally, no.
Okay, well, the last question really revolves around the fact that we need a report on progress like every 4 weeks as this process unfolds. And I mean every 4 weeks, either on the internet or someplace to that fact. And the last one is the option of merging with another school district was never approached as an idea by this legislature.
Right.
I see it in South Texas. You see, you saw Fremont and George West. You've been down there. That happens all over the place. And why don't, if it comes to that, hopefully it doesn't, why couldn't we merge with the other school districts that are successful? We've talked about Midway. We've talked about other school districts. It's not that big a deal. We don't want to have a situation where you have home rule like they did in Cleveland.
Yes,
I was a consultant to that group. The city council operates the Cleveland school districts, and it is a mess. They can't even operate the city. So those are questions I have. I look forward to amazing outcomes, but a formative evaluation process that results in outcomes that lead to corrective action must be part and parcel of what you put together. I think that's an expectation that I have. And I've been doing this since 1967.
67.
I'm that old. Thank you for your courtesy.
Well, I think your comments are obviously well thought out. I can't remember all of them, so you might want to keep the mic or something because I don't remember all of them. But I do really remember that, your question about best practices. I believe that what we're doing is we're not just sitting we're not a bunch of mad scientists, saying, how can we mess with the schools? We're trying to be compliant with the Texas Education Agency. I share some of your frustration about how it's been communicated and some of the ways the political structure works. But the governor, God bless the governor, I'm not bad-mouthing him in public at all, but he's made it pretty clear about how he feels about school choice. And school choice for him and the lieutenant governor is that every kid comes to school with a backpack full of cash. vouchers. And they can take their money wherever they want to go, especially if they're currently, and I'm using the Lieutenant Governor's words, if they're stuck in a low-performing school. Now, I happen to think some of that's reasonable. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, you could give vouchers to every kid over at Alta Vista, and on the first day of school, we're going to have a group of beautiful boys and girls that are going to come up to Alta Vista and say, I know I have a choice, but this is where I want to go. I don't care what you do, we have to keep University High School open for the sanctity of the South tradition. It's a pride thing. It's an issue of how we feel about the fact that someone from outside of Waco has the audacity to suggest we should close those schools. Your question about external controls, actually the process we're going through does involve that. One of the things I like about a partnership with a local nonprofit is if the local nonprofit is valued in the community, then hopefully that'll be a level of confidence that the community will have that a new set of eyes are monitoring what's going on at this school. For example, if we were to partner with Prosper Waco, it's kind of controversial, I know, I've talked to several people about that, but having said that, their board is probably one of the most prominent boards in the city. It's got 2 former mayors on it, some of our heaviest hitters in the city in terms of economic development, leadership, and I believe that a fresh set of eyes with people who are invested in the city might be good. You know, I would say yes, but I understand that's probably up for debate. Don't have a what? Oh, that's a problem. That's true. But you can't say that about Prosper Waco because I'm on their board. I'm a minority. So your points are well taken. I mean, we've got to work through this. We're not coming to the community tonight suggesting that it's all done and ready to go and we're going to go to the board next week for action. No, we just got the application last week. We're working through the process. Some of my ideas that I've been presenting at these community meetings, single gender, for example, I'm not sure if it's going to work. I'm not even sure if it'll get approved. So we're just working on ideas based on our best practices. But so I want to talk to you some more, Mr. Baltazar, make sure I get all your questions and make sure we engage you every 4 weeks as your request. Yes, ma'am. Next, we'll do it. All right, go ahead, Grace.
Buenas noches. Como madre de 2 hijos que van a la escuela de Waco ISD, ¿cómo Waco ISD va a ayudar a mis hijos? Y yo como madre, ¿cómo yo los puedo ayudar en la casa? Tengo 2 preguntas. Esa es la primera.
En Waco ISD tenemos diferentes opciones para los estudiantes y tenemos personas que trabajan con los estudiantes, trabajan con ellos las profesoras, pero también estas personas trabajan directamente con los estudiantes para ayudarlos en lectura. Y para los padres, si los padres no hablan español, no hablan inglés, tenemos clases bilingües que pueden venir y leer con los niños y trabajar con las profesoras y adoptar una de las clases bilingües y quisiéramos que vinieran a la escuela. También tenemos un grupo de padres que nos reunimos y también tenemos estudiantes en el grupo y nos reunimos durante el año para ver cómo podemos ayudar más a los niños que están aprendiendo inglés y cómo podemos trabajar más con los padres de la comunidad. También hemos puesto también una persona en nuestro departamento que es dedicada a trabajar con las familias inmigrantes las familias que son nuevas a este país, para ayudar a los niños que son nuevos a este país, siquiera cualquier grado, de pre-K hasta la secundaria. Pero es para ayudar a las familias y también a los niños.
Ok, mi
Gracias.
segunda pregunta es para Dr. Nelson. Estaba diciendo hace rato que piensan poner 2 escuelas que sean solamente de niñas y solamente de niños. Si acaso la escuela, dijo él que no sabía si iba a trabajar, si no trabajan los 2 géneros diferentes, o sea, si los estudiantes no pasan los exámenes y si no están haciendo bien en la escuela de niñas y en la escuela de niños, ¿cuánto tiempo se tardarían en decir, ok, esto no está funcionando, vamos a cambiarlo? ¿1 año? ¿2 años? ¿Cuánto tiempo antes de que ellos hagan el cambio?
Una buena pregunta. Dr. Nelson, her second question is regarding the single gender schools. And what she's asking as a parent is, how long will it take once if we do decide to go with the single gender schools and our board approves that, how long would it take if we see as a district that the students are not passing the test and they're not improving? Would it be 2 years, 3 years?
That's an excellent question,
Una excelente pregunta.
and I don't know the answer to that. You
No,
know,
no sé la
I'm
respuesta.
the
ahora.
type of person that I'm not going to let a school just fail year after year after year after year.
Él
So
es
if
el
we
tipo
went
de
with-
persona que no va a dejar que eso pase cada año.
If we had a single gender school, you know, I'd give them 24 months
Le daría 24
before I
meses.
start thinking about if they're just not doing well. But we're really if we're gonna make this move, it's gonna show improvement.
Si lo vamos a hacer, van a acelerar. Van a
We're gonna
ser
train
mejor.
the teachers differently. We're gonna have special programs for
Vamos a
kids.
entrenar a las profesoras diferentes, vamos a tener
And,
programas
you know,
para
as
los
a-
estudiantes.
As the parent of a middle school child, I think this is a great idea.
Como el padre de un niño de una escuela intermedia, él piensa que esto es una buena idea.
Gracias. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'd like to open with some ideas that I had regarding some things for the students. One of the things that I think we don't think about as adults is their learning styles. Do we make their training curriculum go towards whether they're auditory learners, whether they learn by visual, or whether they learn by hands-on? And so that may be something that we can implement, some type of testing to see, you know, to kind of pair them up with the proper teachers who are, yeah. The next thing is the Apple Connected program. I think that they already have all the schools they were supposed to satisfy under Obama, but they do have an education, you know, buying program where they work with financing. And I know that we're on a budget constraint, but kids nowadays are technology driven. And so the more that they are able to work with apps and things like that, that they work, you know, utilize when they're not at school, maybe more ways and methods that they can learn a lot easier. And I know that we have difficulties with allowing textbooks out of the classroom. That may be another issue, but
That's a huge problem.
possibly with the, you know, the Apple laptops or whatever, I can't remember what they're called, but maybe we could get electronic textbooks, and that could be also a cost saving. You talk about teachers, and I know that, well, I believe that they receive incentives for passing the STAR test. Maybe we should consider some other performance-based incentives throughout the year, maybe, you know, a day off or, you know, something small, you know, to let them know that we care also. And colleges have like annual end-of-year surveys for their professors. And I think the students are their end users. And perhaps, you know, implementing a survey that evaluates the teacher.
Sure.
May
They
be
do
something
they
that
do
we
in
need to
Dallas
implement.
ISD.
My children have attended, let me see, Rappaport, they've attended Midway, they've attended Conley, and most recently Waco ISD. and you reference Midway on several occasions. So I also propose, why not take a page out of their book? They have what you call intermediate schools. I know you're proposing same-sex, but what if you did the pre-K,
5, 6.
through first grade, second through third elementary level, second through fourth elementary level, fifth through sixth intermediate, and then have 2 separate 7th grade centers and an 8th grade center. That way that can kind of dissolve the same-sex issue, possibly.
All right, kids be transitioning every year, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
Midway's good.
Okay,
Sure.
and that way they won't have a culture shock when they go to high school, and, you know, you have Tennyson who has not experienced, you know, they've experienced regular junior high lifestyle, and then you have these children who have only gone with girls or boys, then they go to high school, and it's like, you know, we're back, you know, I think that's something to be considered with, you know, 12, 13, 14-year-olds.
Good point.
Okay. The next thing is, in your previous meeting, your first meeting, you mentioned something about adult behaviors must change first before we can move
Student
forward.
outcomes, right.
Yes. Well, I know that you mentioned that you're going to change teachers, and you know, switch them out. But I think that that's a great idea. So I wanted to commend you on that suggestion. In your initial meeting, you also stated that you wanted us to help change the perception of how Waco ISD is viewed. But I am an alumni of University High School. I'm also a current parent of a Trojan. And your comment that you don't care much about football, you care about them learning to read, correct? Well, I took issue with that because my son is a football player, and I believe that he can read. And I don't think that you should make something like light of something such as that. To me, it was offensive. But I also have an article for mysanantonio.com where I quote, you stated, you were an outsider, and the quickest way to change a school is through athletics. You said if you're going to transform your high schools, you have to start with athletics. Not everybody has to go to state, but you have got to put a product on the field that puts people in the stands. That makes people proud. And I don't see any difference between Laredo and Waco ISD in that capacity. So, like I said, I was offended by that comment, but the other thing that I wanted to mention, you also stated that all our students should be treated equitably and diversity is our strength. Well, what I can tell you is that I've looked at a lot of documents on Waco ISD website that shows the demographics of various schools, starting with elementary all the way up through high school. And what I can tell you is that we're not equitably divided on the high school levels. And I know that this is not a talk about the high schools, but you mentioned university and you mentioned Waco High. And when you think of Waco ISD, those are two schools that come to mind, to be honest with you. And this is also to the school board, because I've heard your comments, I've read multiple articles, and like I said, this is my first year back to Waco ISD, but again, with all your intellectual prowess, I find it difficult to understand how you can have 4 feeder junior high schools and the ratio is 3 to 1. That's very disparaging. And I don't think you'll ever get a quality product feeding one school all of everybody. And so, I'm sorry. I know that you thought that you solved the problem with A.J. Morris transfer to Waco, to university, but you didn't. You increased the numbers because I believe that was Mr. Sykes that made that comment. You said that, I think it was Mr. Coach Willis that addressed you at a board meeting, and he asked you if you would reconsider, and you said, well, if the numbers don't improve in 2 years, but you knew it would improve because you were going to move A.J. Moore over. So I'm just tired of, because of me being an alumni and an athlete, I think that university has always been looked on as a stepchild, and we are the product of the South Side. And it just feels to me that Waco High gets everything. They have their own radio station, and I feel that if we were to be even, we could have stopped it at saying, give both of them support or no access at all. But The last thing that I wanted to state is that not only is our schools, our representation biased in schools, our school board is also biased in representation. We have 3, I believe, Waco High members, 2 university members, and 2 at large. And I can go on to say that I've researched each of you as well. And I also know that traditionally the vote will never go in our direction, because when you have children and you have relatives that feed into a high school, I'm certain that you're going to vote in their favor. But, you know, I don't want to call anyone's names out, but.
Oh, yeah. I offended you,
but
Mr.
I think
Sykes.
that to make Waco ISD better at all, you have got to be fair, equitable, and make sure that we are diverse. And that's part of your non-discrimination clause, to make sure that happens for your education system. And so, with that being said, I'm closing.
Well, sure. Obviously, I'd like to respond to some of your comments respectfully. First of all, I want to thank you for the courage it took to disagree with me. I'm just kidding. Second of all, your points about, if I want to be clear, I'm talking about football right now. Basketball, you just went to the regional tournament. Soccer almost went to state. One middle school feeding them. So they have some of the best athletic programs outside of football. You mentioned my comments in Laredo about athletics, totally out of context. All the schools made it in Laredo. So until you show me 23 schools that literacy is not an issue. Also, let me say this real clear. No one in Waco supports the new head football coach more than me. So that's what I do. If I don't like what I see, I put someone else in there. He's solid with me. He deserves time to build his program. So I think you're right that I'm an all-state left tackle from Converse Judson. I've played in the big game. And I think all that is wonderful and awesome. But as a player, as a teacher, as an administrator, every time you hear me talking about football, it's with a group of kids who are not low performing. And I'll pull a kid out of recess if they can't read. I know that's controversial. Well, go play at home. When you come up here to learn how to read, how to write, and how to think critically. And we have a responsibility to foster an environment that it's not athletics or academics. It's both. So I apologize to you if you perceive my lack of focus on the university high school football program as offensive. I've been to their games. TA, when they're asking me about closing the schools, they're not saying unless you go 7-3 in football. They're not saying that. But I respect what you're saying as a passionate parent and alumni. And I'd be frustrated too if my high school was losing year after year. And I've had this conversation with the principal and the athletic director and the head football coach. So when I say it's not the priority at a community meeting on school closure, that doesn't mean I haven't addressed it. It's just on my list of priorities. We need to buy some more art brushes too. That's on the list. Not as fast as literacy though. Literacy is coming up here at the top. The list goes on and on. So your points are well taken, and no comments or bad comments. We're not trying to be a popularity contest. We understand our district has some serious problems in terms of equity, in terms of communication, and that's one of the reasons we're here. We've already had the discussion in my short tenure about 3 schools versus 1 middle school. And I could pull out this capacity report and show if we move 1. And so, that's another conversation at the board level. I do believe in athletics. I need to declare, that's true. You can Google that. and I'm a product of athletics and fine arts, for the record. And I believe in winning state championships. So I'm all for that. But right now, all of my focus is on making sure we have no school closures. And if you know how it is, see, you should appreciate my aggression. Because I know a lot of superintendents that are new that would stand up and say, hey, it's not me. It's TEA forcing me to give them the charters. It's not me. Because they want, instead of having 23 schools, they'd rather have 17. It'd be easier. Superintendent don't want to start with 5 low-performing schools. It'd be quicker just to say, let's surrender them. I'm not doing that. I'm saying we will save these schools. We will. I don't know how we're going to do it. I'm not sure of the timeline. I'm telling you, we won't rest until we have a feeder pattern going to university that includes Alta Vista Elementary. But your points are well taken. I know we need to visit. I believe someone else had a question or comment.
Dr. Nielsen, it's
Yes,
nice
sir.
to meet you. My name is Michael Parker.
Yes,
I
sir.
have been involved with these schools for years. I've got 3 kids that went to schools, and I've got 2 grandchildren now in our Waco schools. Couple of things. Heard you talk about the shortfall that we have on our budget. I've been harping about this to every superintendent that I could get through to. That big bank building down there, we don't need it. That's a waste of taxpayers' money. We operate it for what, a year and a half in an old school building. That building down there, we need to get rid of it. We're paying way too much for that out of the taxpayers' back pocket. Second thing that I've been trying to get through whenever I was on the South Waco Transformation Committee, and I would love to see it come to be with you as the leader of this ship. We have a reading problem. Nope, that's a no-brainer. We do. We, just like you said, we've got some students that can read at a 9th grade level, and the teachers are having to stop because we've got children that are so far behind. You're saving money. Put that money to good use. Every one of our elementary campuses, for every class, we need to have a certified or a licensed aide in those classrooms, because that teacher cannot, like you said, stop with these children that can read and try to take care of these children over here. We need more assistance with the teachers. We are asking one teacher to take care of what, 16, 22 students? And that's a load on our teachers. They need help in the classrooms. We need more parent involvement. We need parents. We can ask Dr. Nielsen, we can ask the teachers, the principals to come up with the best ideas. But as a parent, in every one of the schools that my children attended here, if they called, I don't care if I was at work, don't care if I was at a movie theater, if I was bowling, I dropped what I was doing and I went to that school. I hate to say this, but really, Waco Independent School District, a lot of our parents are happy to see their kids get on that bus or go on that property, because guess what? For 8 hours, I got a babysitter. I don't have to worry about my kids. You're going to feed my kid, you're going to take care of my kid. Oh God, here comes 4 o'clock at the end of the day. Now I got to deal with them. I want to hurry up and try to get them fed, put them in bed, because I don't have to deal with them. Our school district, as a parent, I see where a lot of our parents look at our district as a daycare for our kids all the way to high school. Parents ought to be ashamed of where we're at right now in this district. We, the parents, are the ones that are ultimately responsible for anything that our children does. We, as parents, our goal is to say, I am going to teach you right from wrong. I'm going to make sure that you are a productive citizen. And the day you turn 18 and you walk across that stage, I can look and say, you know what? I did the best I could. I'm going to be there to back my child. So we can say that the school board, yes, me and the school board has bumped heads 1,000,000 times. Okay? And every one of them will tell you that we have. Me and the superintendents from the past have bumped heads. But I can say one thing. Anytime I've had a problem with my children, Larry Perez and me, we bump heads more than once. He lives up the road from me and he probably wants to move. But you know what though? Mr. Perez has been there to back me. The teachers and the principals, they know that I will do what I need to do for my kids. They back me. We as a community, more so the parents, and I'm the type of person, I don't care whose toes they step on. If you don't take an interest in your child, don't blame Dr. Nielsen, don't blame the board, don't blame the principals or the teachers. If you're not going to take an interest in your child, what do you think it's going to lead to? It's going to lead to nothing but problems. We as a community, we can do everything we want, but we got to start at the front porch at the house. The parents, we have got to get through to the parents how important it is for their kids to succeed. And until we do that, y'all can come up with the best plans in the world, and the schools will probably close in about another 3 or 4 years down the road if we don't start with the parents.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening. My name's Steve Swanson, and I'm from Austin, Texas. And the reason I'm here is almost 10 years ago, I got invited by a friend of mine who's a well-known Hispanic businessman in Austin to come and volunteer at the first school that had been closed by the state of Texas Accountability System. And because of that experience and that volunteering energy for now 10 years, I've learned a lot. That energy has led to discovering the statutes we're talking about, the statutes that have existed for 20 years. And I'm here to applaud everything I've heard here. The community coming together, a stout young man bringing you together and saying, we're going to do it and save our community. What I'm here to share with you is the state of Texas has not done its job. The Commissioner of Education and the TEA have failed to fulfill their responsibilities for the last 20 years that are written in law. And it's hypocritical for the state to bring this pressure down upon you. Not that it's not good to stimulate this activity, but it's hypocritical for the state to get away with closing your schools and getting rid of your school board. It's absolutely hypocritical. The citizens of Waco have a chance to ask the Commissioner of Education or their representatives and their senators to ask if the Texas Commissioner of Education's ever been assessed. What is the grade the Texas Commissioner of Education has? What is the grade the TEA has? Because they're supposed to be part of the improvement program. What is their grade? My research has revealed, and it's published, and the Senate and the House have it, F-. And the reason it's an F- is you got to show up, right, to get a grade. If you don't show up, you shouldn't even get a grade. So I'm here to encourage everything I've heard, and this is my second meeting, and also to encourage you to learn and ask more about what the state government has supposed to have been doing for you for the last 20 years, as opposed to sitting here and looking at a bill that was written 2 or 3 years ago and go, oh my gosh, they're going to close us. They had responsibilities 20 years ago that you need to look out for. And I have a little handout here that actually I've shared with the Senate and the House. Texas has 4 streams of law. One for funding schools, which we call lawful but awful, and that comes out of the House of Representatives. All right? Everybody knows about the finance chaos we have in education. Nobody's responsible for that but the legislature itself. We have another, and we follow those laws. We follow our chaotic laws. We have laws for accountability that are called drill and kill and school to prison. We follow those laws. But the laws we have to serve and save children, we don't follow. And that starts at the top. The laws we have to make sense out of how effectively we use our resources, that includes the parents, the community, as well as our money, we don't follow them. So that's why I'm here, is to thank you, first of all, for doing this, and second of all, to encourage you, and I'm here to help. I've spent 10 years learning this stuff, and I'd like to have somebody, especially the kids in this community, benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
here's our legislator, so if you want to talk to him about the problem. And then here's Larry, if you want to talk to him about the problem. My name is Robert Aguilar. I'm one of the people that filed a lawsuit through a group called, it's not loud enough? Okay. Through a group called the Alliance of Mexican Americans in 1971. Most of us are dead, some of us are still alive. I'm one that's still alive, thank God. And we filed a lawsuit because of the discrimination that was going on, and also Waco Independent School District was not integrated. The law was passed, or the Supreme Court ruled in 1954, I believe, or 1956, and Waco fought it. So we, the Alliance of Mexican Americans, made up of several groups in Waco, filed a lawsuit, and we won. The lawsuit stated several things: change your curriculum, make it so that children of different races and ethnic groups are mentioned, that our accomplishments that we have done to this great country are out there for everyone to see, and it's still not fully changed. That's been 45 years ago. Another thing we fought for was employment. We needed black teachers, African American teachers. We needed Chicano teachers and administrators. That was a 20-year battle from 1971 to about 91. We fought and fought. They would come to us and say, you guys find them. We ain't got the gas to go down to South Texas. All kinds of excuses. Finally, we started growing our own. And I hope you keep that program up, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, Robert Aguilar, I'll be talking to you soon. I'm the coordinator for the LULAC, coordinator for LULAC Civil Rights in District 12 in Central Texas, which covers Waco. The employees, we fought for teachers. We finally got some. We had people that had master's degrees and had to go out of town as a principal to show that they could become principals here. They had to go out of town and take jobs and drive 30, 45, 50 miles to prove that they could do the job. And then when Moore closed, which was a black school, a lot of black teachers were not hired in the school district. And that hurt a lot of students. Now, what does it mean having a teacher that you can relate to? It's a situation where it builds self-esteem. You see that person as a role model. You see that person as, you say, I can be a teacher. I can be a principal. And so then we started fighting for principalship. We didn't have very many Hispanics that had masters. And the ones that had it were picked up at big districts for a lot of money. And then we started getting people that wanted to stay in the area and wanted to work in Waco. We had friends from all over the South Texas that we talked to, and they came and became teachers. So for 40 years, we fought for superintendents. And then Bonnie Kane came in and killed 45 years of work. Yeah, 45 years of work. She killed it. I'm not saying that the white principals are not good, but surely Mexicans can do it, and black people can do it too. So I brought this up to the board 2 years ago. This man can remember that. And I said, there's a problem. So I waited a year. Nothing happened. So then I went and filed a complaint with Bonnie. I took some parents that had some concerns about how they were being treated by some of the white principals. And they went to her office, and I hope this doesn't happen with you, sir, and they asked to meet and discuss problems with this principal in one school. that was mistreating them and the children. And she said, to have them fill out this paperwork. Put your name and address here. And they're worried about it. Who might get it? Who might get it? Immigration. They're not going to put anything down. She said, well, we can't meet with them. So we do some research, and I talked to, I live in South Waco. I know everybody. And so I talked to teacher aides, and they said, guess what? This principal told us not to speak Spanish with the parents. Somebody there didn't understand that she was supposed to treat all of us the same. She was white. She was supposed to treat all of us the same. And then there's no PTAs in the elementaries. And when there's PTAs, the principal is there, and a lot of times takes over the meetings.
Speaking of taking over meetings.
Yep, I wanted to talk. It took a long time, but I got it.
Take your time.
I'm trying to keep up with the Reverend.
No.
I mean, Reverend preachers can go forever. No. These are questions that I received.
Right.
I can do that too, Reverend. And God's watching me.
No, take your time.
You are here, and you will be. You're going to see if there's an attitude of arrogance that the last superintendent left here, and that arrogance was implemented in a lot of the teachers, especially among the white teachers. It was an arrogance against the kids, arrogance against the parents, and she left it. And I told the board about it. And I said, I won't be checking y'all for the next year and see what happens. And you remember that. You listen to everything I say and then criticize me in a friendly way. So that arrogance is something that you need to work with. The statement that someone said, don't speak Spanish to parents, what the heck? Then who's going to talk to them? Another thing, too, you don't have any Spanish-speaking administrators.
¿Cómo se pueden dar cuenta por mi español?
Sí, bueno, sí, tú hablas español como yo.
Muy bien,
Y lo hablo bien. Hey, I checked on you, Laredo. I got a lot of friends down there. They gave me an A+ on you.
All right.
They said, but, no.
But, yeah, I'm sure.
That's pretty much what I have to say, but that arrogance thing is something you need to work with. Plus, you need to, I would love you to send out a memo and tell the teachers, let the parents speak Spanish to the aides. And you need to look at the administrative setup, and if it's all white and no one speaks Spanish there, that's an administrator, not an aide, and not a secretary, but someone that's administrator and can answer the question. Not get an interpreter by a secretary or a teacher aide who doesn't really understand the law.
Yes, sir.
And that happens a lot.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate your passion, and we obviously need more people like you. For the record, I shouldn't joke like this, but in my first 3 hires, I hired a 6'7" Anglo, awesome guy, but he's Anglo. And then the next one, I shouldn't mention his height because the other ones are short, but anyway, so my next hire was a Hispanic male who speaks fluent Spanish. His wife, his lovely wife who's here, speaks Spanish as her first language. My next hire was an African-American male who will be coordinating our technology programs. And so I share your appreciation for diversity. I happen to think it's a good thing. And we hope to have an employment team, a team of employees that matches the demographics of the district. Now, I know my beautiful Anglo principals want me to defend them as they deserve to be defended, because some of my white principals are more Mexican than a lot of Mexicans in South Waco. You know? So I ain't gonna say no names, Ms. Hamilton, but I think that your comments about welcoming Spanish speakers, the young lady who spoke tonight in Spanish and asked her questions, I know her. I already talked to her. So we welcome people to come to us in whatever language makes them most comfortable. In engaging our Latino community, obviously there's some history here, and we're going to turn that around. We're going to turn that around, and our Latino communities are going to feel welcome in our schools, and we're going to take that very seriously. So I applaud that, and I look forward to having a relationship with you. Comments or questions, Ms. Robertson? I'm scared to give it up. All right, go ahead, señora.
Buenas noches. Soy mamá de un estudiante mexicana, solo hablo español y tengo dos preguntas para usted.
Sí.
La primera es, ¿cómo los padres hispanos que solo hablan español pueden ayudar a los estudiantes? Y la segunda, ¿qué le diría usted a los padres que no tienen un estatus legal en este país para que ellos se puedan sentir seguros en las escuelas?
She has two questions. She's a parent and has a child here in our district. She wants to know, what can she do as a parent that doesn't speak English to help her child? And her second question is for parents that are undocumented. How can she come to our schools and feel safe coming to our schools to help our schools?
First of all, we want to be clear that our school district is not taking students away from their parents because of immigration. So someone who comes, thank you. There's no discussion. We're not having any conversations with immigrations, customs, border patrol. Now, if someone came to our school and they had some kind of criminal record, I'm not sure how we'll have to handle that. But for a parent who wants to come in and help their child, then come as you are. And if as you are, as Spanish speaking, then todo bien. And we'll work with you and put you with students that can benefit from your skill set. And DACA immigration, you know, I've dealt with this on a personal, on an intimate level in my last district. And I just want to be clear, I'm not even having that conversation. Parents should just know, when you drop your kids off, when we need to get in touch with you, it has nothing to do with immigration. Nothing to do. We're not playing those games. You just got to have a light bill. You have a light bill, you get in here. So I appreciate the questions. Let her know we appreciate the question, and we'll follow up with her.
Él aprecia las preguntas que usted preguntó. Quiere que usted sepa que quiere que venga como usted es a las escuelas. Nuestro trabajo no es para quitarle los niños a los padres. Y yo le voy a decir que yo misma le mando las leyes a los consejeros de las escuelas para que los estudiantes sepan son leyes de los Estados Unidos para que sepan las protecciones que tienen los niños que no son documentados. Yo trabajo con los consejeros para educar a los estudiantes y tengo una posición en mi departamento que trabaja con los padres inmigrantes. Entonces no queremos que nunca tenga miedo de venir a las escuelas. Las escuelas estamos para servir a los padres y a los niños y queremos que se sientan que pueden llegar y aunque no hable el inglés, usted puede ayudarnos. Porque para los niños que son bilingües, eso es lo más poderoso que puede tener un niño. Seguir teniendo su lengua y ser no solo bilingüe, pero poder leer también en su lengua. Entonces, queremos que venga.
Thank you. You know, the other thing I want to do is introduce a couple of my dear friends in this role. You know, I already mentioned Councilwoman Rodriguez and her fine husband, Joe. They've been good to me. I appreciate that. I also wanted to be sure and recognize my good friend from the Chamber, the Executive Director of the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Matt Metter. Let's give him a round of applause. And one of my best partners in this city has been the President and CEO of the North American region at Extraco Bank. I'm not sure if that's right. I sound like I butchered it. But he is a good man, and I really appreciate Mark Reynolds for being here. Let's give him a round of applause. Mr. Rodriguez.
You know, I appreciate that you've come to the Hispanic Chamber and you've met with us a couple of times. and you talked about us taking a leadership role. That's really something new here in Waco, that you come to a Hispanic organization as to take a leadership role, because the thinking here is that we can follow, but we can't lead.
Yes, sir.
But we have proved it to the Waco ISD in other events that we've got awards, dropping the dropout rate and doing other things. So I commend you on your thinking, and I wish that the other people around this Waco area would take that type of thinking. You talked about, in no disrespect, about the powerful board you have, but they can't go down there on Burnett and Clay and all of those and talk to those people. But the nonprofits and the grassroots organizations can. So I think it's very important that you involve them and give them leadership roles. We don't want to follow all our life. We want to lead.
Sure.
Okay? So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have another question regarding the schools closing. If you did go to the gender-neutral schools, would you staff the male campus with more male teachers and the female campus with more female teachers?
That's the thought, theoretically, but, if you look at our teacher situation, most of our teachers are female.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it'll be able to be pure.
Right.
But, in theory, you want to have a lot of males at the male campus, and
Right.
I'd love to have all females if I could at the female
That's
campus.
another question I have, and I'm not against giving stipends, but for the elementary campuses, a lot of our behavioral incidents come from children without fathers, really, and I think that having the male role models at a lower level would help them, I guess, not make connections, but have relationships with males. So maybe offering stipends to male teachers to get into the elementary campuses.
It's not a bad idea. I'm sure my female employees would have
I'm
to
a
discuss
female
that
employee
further,
also, but whatever's
but
best for
hey,
the kids.
whatever.
It doesn't have to be like $10,000.
What is your name? I want to call it your bill.
No,
It's your-
hey, I would be
work with a
honored
lot
to
of
have that named
females.
after me.
Very good ideas. Thank you for your comment. We've got, I'll go ahead, Reverend Dalco.
Real point of clarity, that's all. I heard the lady mention earlier in terms of the makeup of the board. If we don't like the makeup of the board, we need to vote. That's a voting issue. That's not comprised. It's not that the board does that themselves. You have to vote. That's a community issue. And I heard the gentleman speak also in terms of some of the legislation that has been passed. Once again, that's a voting issue in terms of us voting and who we have making these decisions in those state positions. So it's a voting issue. In other words, community, vote, vote, vote.
I got something from, hello? Cut me off.
I hear you.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just one thing I heard from the community. LULAC also was involved with us when we won those awards, and Councilman Rodriguez reminded me about that. So I just want to let you know that, okay?
Yes, sir. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Just as a point of clarification, you mentioned nonprofits. Do these nonprofits have to be established nonprofits that are already at work in the community, or could there be not a nonprofit established to support our schools and do what the idea that you have already for having the nonprofits have the wraparound services and all?
I think the answer to your question is that we could create a new nonprofit. As a superintendent, I'd be a little concerned about creating something new, just because that's going to add to the, I want to say, training that I would have to do on how to monitor a school campus. But maybe, if you look at the application, we can work with an established one, or a community can create their own.
Okay.
Perdón, una pregunta más. de aquí a abril parece que es el tiempo cuando los estudiantes van a tomar los exámenes. ¿Qué va a hacer Waco ISD para que los estudiantes que no han pasado los exámenes pasen esos exámenes? Los que van en la escuela primaria salen a las 3:15. ¿Pueden tener tutoría, no lo sé, 2 horas? Y tal vez traer chicos de Baylor, chicos y chicas de Baylor que les puedan ayudar a los maestros para que estén uno a uno leyendo con ellos o con la clase de matemáticas para que los puedan ayudar y para que estén listos para el tiempo cuando van a tomar los exámenes, y lo mismo con la escuela secundaria y con las preparatorias. ¿Podría hacer eso Waco ISD para todos los estudiantes? ¿O cuál es el plan de Waco ISD para ayudarlos de aquí a marzo o abril cuando tengan que tomar los exámenes?
Buena pregunta. She would like to know, the students are taking the STAR test in April. What is the district's plan to ensure that the students do well on the test? And are we going to have tutorials for the children after school? So she mentioned the elementary students get out around 3 o'clock. Are they going to stay for tutorials 2 hours? Or are we going to do tutorials for the middle schools and high schools as well? What is our plan to ensure they do well?
Yeah, we work on that every day. I'd encourage any parent to go ask their child's teacher the same question, because I would answer the question by saying, we're working on improving our kids' set of academic knowledge daily.
Trabajamos con los estudiantes cada día. Lo estamos haciendo todos los días. She also wanted to know if we have Baylor students coming to help with our students as well in the
That's a
schools.
good question. You know, really, I would build
pregunta.
a strong case that any idea you have, we've already tried it.
Él dice-
Baylor, MCC, Tarleton, Texas Tech. Yeah.
Él
So,
dice que cualquier idea que
those are good
usted
questions,
está,
and yeah,
buenas
we're doing
preguntas.
everything we can.
Tiene buenas preguntas y buenas ideas, y muchas de las ideas que usted nos está diciendo hoy, muchas de esas ideas las estamos implementando. Gracias.
What? Go ahead, one more. Last question. Or 2 questions.
My question is on the campuses that are proposed for the pre-K through second and then the 3 through 5. What happens when one campus meets standard and the other campus doesn't? Is it pretty much a done deal that
So-
they're going to restructure?
Those campuses are standalones. So if South Waco became a pre-K through 2 campus, it no longer would fall under the state accountability system. So it'd be silent. So would J.H. Hines.
But I mean this year. So like, for example, if I work at Brook Avenue, but if Brook Avenue meets standard and Alta Vista doesn't meet standard and we're supposed to be in this partnership, what happens to the campus that doesn't meet standard?
Yeah, we're not sure yet. Good question. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Andrew Lopez, and I'd just like to comment to the young lady asking about Baylor students. I had the opportunity to meet with DACA just this past week, and they are ready, and they're trying to assemble themselves to help our schools. So they want to know how they can get involved. I've also worked with some of the neighborhood associations now and asking them to get involved with the people within their community. This is not going to start unless our parents get involved. 50% of the foundation's got to be the parents. You got to help them at home. You got to help them at school, even if it takes going on weekends. Now, one last thing I'll say is for the folks that have concerns about the male-female type of schools, I'm a product of one, and I want to tell you something, it works. It really works. When you're in 7th and 8th grade up north, what you're focusing on, your parents are helping you focus on what you want to do. Do you want to go to college, or do you want to be in a vocational trade? Because up north, you got to be in unions. And to be in unions, you have to be certified. So in 7th and 8th grade, we're focused like most of the kids focus down here before they go to college. By the time we're out of high school, we already know what we're going to be doing. Most of our schools have gotten us jobs, leadership jobs, through corporations, through companies and the schools. And these were the public school systems. This was back in 1976. I came to Waco at that time, and I asked my counselor, what is going on in Waco? And he told me, we're working on it. That's the one thing I have to say. With regards to the football, great thing, but the percentage of people that actually get paid in this profession is so minimal. Why do we spend so much money on something that produces so minimal results? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
We will be around here. I'll allow the board president to make a few final remarks. We'll be here to visit with you as long as you like. Thank you for coming.
I know we've run late. If you have, on every table, there was a form that says, I want to help. Some of you who want to get involved in the schools, if you will fill that out, we will pick them up and we'll contact you and help you get involved in the schools. Appreciate your staying till the end. I know we've run long tonight. It is 7:55 and we'll stand adjourned.